We can go ahead, take our seats, and get ready for this work session, please. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and start with introductions, starting with Mr. Dunbar.
Forrest Dunbar.
Crystal Kennedy.
Pete Peterson.
Meg Zalafel.
Cameron Perez-Radio.
Austin Quinn Davidson. Suzanne LaFrance.
Felix Rivera.
Fred Dice.
Christopher Constant.
Shayna Kilcoyne. Catherine Kemp.
And then we're also joined by John Weddleton. All right. So this is a work session on the Climate Action Plan, which we will be seeing before us on the 21st, I believe. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. We know you have a lot in front of you, and we really appreciate the time. I'm Shayna Kilcoyne from Solid Waste Services. I'm the Energy and Sustainability Manager for the Municipality of Anchorage. This is Catherine Kemp from the Mayor's Office, Special Assistant to the Mayor, and we've been working together on the Climate Action Plan for the past 9+ months. So you should have the Climate Action Plan document as well as the Municipality of Anchorage Climate Action Strategy. These are the two documents we'll be discussing today. I wanted to encourage Assembly members to feel free to ask questions throughout the process, throughout the presentation, as opposed to saving your questions till the end so that we can have kind of an interactive discussion. We last presented to the Assembly in September, and we were grateful and encouraged for the unanimous support to develop the Climate Action Plan. So we're excited to present this to you today. As a reminder, this was the product of a partnership with the University of Alaska. UAA received a grant to fund the entirety of the work. So we'll talk about these two documents today, the full Climate Action Plan, which is a foundational document that we'll be working from for the foreseeable future. And then mostly we'll be talking about the municipal document that goes along with it, that kind of talks about the different things that we'll be doing in the near term. So our overall goal within the Climate Action Plan is to reduce emissions 80% by 2050 with an interim goal of 40% by 2030. These goals are very ambitious and they're also very necessary. And we are very forward in this Climate Action Plan that this plan and what we've gotten here already, it does not get us there. It puts us on the path to get us there, but we need to keep working on future iterations and strengthen where we're already going. I also wanted to talk about the goal in general. Yes, the goal of this is to protect the future of our one planet. But we also talk a lot about the benefits that come along with the actions in this plan. So throughout, I hope you'll notice that we really focused on benefits such as clean air and water, jobs and economic development. We talk about quality of life improvement and improvements and transportation opportunities. These are really important as we work to develop the Climate Action Plan. With this is kind of how we developed the Climate Action Plan, and I'm not going to talk about the whole ecosystem, but what I wanted to point out here is that we had over 100 people working on the development of this plan. It was a lot of volunteer hours. Within that were many municipal staff, as well as 17 municipal employees that were either on the steering committee or the working groups. We also worked with many other directors and staff throughout the whole process for input and feedback on the plan. The directors put in a lot of time, and we couldn't have done this without their support of the plan. It was actually pretty interesting working with them because a lot of them were doing things that are in line with adapting to climate change impacts and in line with reducing our emissions, but they didn't think of it in terms of climate action. So that was kind of a fun thing to realize.
We wanted to take a moment just to highlight the community engagement work that we did throughout this whole process. It's been super encouraging to see the level of excitement and interest in the plan. It's reflected in the numbers that we saw throughout this process. It's important to us to really reach out to the community and get feedback throughout the entire process, from the beginning when we were generating ideas, towards the end when we wanted to get their feedback on recommendations that were on paper. So we hosted 7 public open houses at Mountain View Library, at LUSAC, at the museum, and at UAA. And then we also realized that not everyone can come to community meetings on an evening or a weekend. So we hosted these mobile workshops where we would attend community council meetings when they were requested, municipal commissions, faith groups, went to schools, and got a lot of great feedback throughout all of that. In total, we interacted with over 1,400 residents throughout the creation of the plan. In March, we finished up the draft and released it for a month-long online comment period and received 155 comments through that. On the whole, they were super positive. I think we counted, we received about 20 that were either in the theme of climate change isn't real, or this is a waste of taxpayer resources, or we should be focusing on some other issues, but we say that we can focus on multiple topics at once, and that indeed is our responsibility to do so. A lot of interest in improving public transit, improving bike and pedestrian infrastructure, ramping up renewable energy, waste reduction, a lot of interest across all the sectors of the plan, and we incorporated feedback as we got it along the way. Encouraging to see all the support.
So the full climate action plan that was developed with the university includes actions that will be led by the Municipality of Anchorage as well as other partners, including the University of Alaska. And so this document is rich with science and historical data and narratives and sources. And so we wanted to, instead of create an executive summary for the municipality, we wanted to really distill this down into what we're going to do in the near term, what will have the biggest impact, and what do we need to focus on. And frankly, it's really critical that we have those big impacts within the first 2 years and really prove this concept that incorporating climate action into our operations and our policy pays in multiple ways. We don't know what's going to happen with the administration after we lose Mayor Berkowitz, and so we need to show that this is a benefit for the city and for our residents. We definitely talk in here about some of the highlights that we're seeing. Like I mentioned as we were discussing with the directors, there are a ton of things that are already happening. We are definitely not starting from scratch here, and it's been really encouraging to learn more about that. We don't yet have a cost-benefit analysis for the climate action plan. What I can say is that we got a grant actually to develop a detailed financing map that will help us to determine where we can and how we can finance these actions. It is a little bit tough because many of the actions are difficult to monetize. So adding more transportation options for people can be difficult for us to monetize, but that's what we're going to try to do. Many of these actions do reduce our emissions, and they also have a positive return on investment. These are finance ready, these are no-brainers. We're going to start with these. And namely those ones that have a positive return on investment. We're talking about energy efficiency, renewable energy, more transportation options, that kind of thing.
Shana, can I ask,
Absolutely.
is that what's listed here as the top priorities, or is that a different thing?
Top priorities are some in here. These are kind of the highlights, but then if you go through each of the sectors, we have more priorities. These are kind of the high level at a glance view on the second page.
Where?
Sorry, the second page that you were asking about is the kind of at a glance view of priorities. And then within the following sectors, buildings and energy, land use and transportation, those pages have more of the priorities that we'll be working on. More specific for the near term.
Got it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Dyson.
Thank you. Not a pejorative question. How does accelerate our economy fit into a climate action plan?
Well, I guess when I think of accelerating our economy, I think about opportunities for economic development. And so if we're doing things like investing in renewable energy or energy efficiency, we're keeping dollars in the local economy, and we're even creating jobs. Those jobs to like insulate our homes, those are local jobs. And so I guess we thought of that as accelerating our economy, and
But that's not the purpose of dealing with climate change, is to accelerate our economy. When we do all these things, we don't want to dampen the economy. In fact, it might do it, but to have the purpose be to accelerate our economy, that sounds like some chamber.
Well, it is actually a purpose. There's multi-purposes. We are working to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, but we are also working on what we call co-benefits that we call out in the climate action plan. And those do include creating jobs and economic development, and they do include improving air quality, transportation options.
We're flying at different altitudes, that's
Okay.
fine. on this building portion of it, did you all consider the problems with, or the benefits of reducing air conditioning costs?
We talked about that right at the beginning, and we didn't put it in here, but absolutely that should be included.
Well, I mean, something I've been involved in, but we're around looking at all these glass fronted buildings.
Mhm.
They got huge air conditioning costs. They look good and so on and so forth, but huge air conditioning costs that drive up, the kilowatt hours conceived.
Mhm.
And when I first saw it, what can we do to incentivize those businesses having more reflective glass or whatever? I mean, it's profound the amount of power that takes. Was there any consideration given to waste heat recovery?
Yes, absolutely. We do have waste heat recovery included, and in terms of the opportunities that were identified in the Anchorage landscape and opportunities analysis. So we already have some of those identified that we're exploring, mostly through solid waste services and Anchorage water and wastewater utility. But then on a broader level, we're looking at, are there ways to further incentivize?
Yeah, those are long-term things. I worked on those in the bush. Go look at our power plants, and we've got these cooling towers. There's heat that's being, contributing to the problem. And if you can take that heat, and stuff, but it doesn't work unless the user of that heat is close. Darn it. So we want to put powerhouses a long ways away, so we don't have to listen to them or see them. So, but that takes a long view to make that work. But huge savings to be done. I'm sorry, but
Well, no, we've even talked about, we've definitely talked about that and considered, if it could be used for a greenhouse or something of that sort, because that you can kind of put anywhere. Yeah,
Sure.
that's a great suggestion.
and heat the runways.
Oh, yeah.
We could cool a whole a Chugach power station if we put pipes under their runways. But yeah, so
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
yeah, but it's too late. Darn it, for most of it, because we weren't even thinking about those things. Of citing the need and producing there. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question.
Sure, Ms. Alta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Jason, you should bring up a good point that has me thinking about how do you imagine this playing out as we consider large infrastructure plans moving forward. I'd like to hear a little bit about that, if you can highlight some of that.
Absolutely. So an interesting thing that keeps coming up is the municipality's jurisdiction. And we currently, when you look at the big sources of emissions, we're looking at heat and electric generation. We currently own MLNP, but we're selling it. And so what we did include within the plan was kind of some broader scale ambitions to work on a larger level regionally. What we don't have is regional energy planning. And so what we have is many, utilities or entities who are operating in a vacuum when really we need to all be working together in order to create a more efficient system. So that's something that absolutely I hope to work on as part of a larger plan for not just Anchorage, but really that's a regional issue and a statewide issue. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. I mean, we have to turn over our infrastructure, we update it, and if we're looking at, Anchorage's climate goals or reduced emission goals, how is that playing in as we consider everything from, right now we've got runway changes happening at the airport, or we have road projects, and so I was just kind of wondering what that intersection is, and I understand municipality doesn't control those players, but that was kind of where I was going with that.
That's a really great point, and I hope that these entities, JBER included, the airport, these are big emissions sources. I hope they will see what the municipality is working to do and will be willing to work with us. But yeah, we do need to do a better job at reaching out to them, and I know the mayor has been working with them.
Thank you, Ms. Alta. Ms. Press.
I was just going to add to what Shana said, but she said it towards the end there, but to Ms. Alatal's question, I think for the larger climate action plan, it's the administration's goal to lead by example and show that this is valuable for business, for our community, for our environment, and sort of lay the groundwork for everybody to keep following with the actions that we can take as the municipality from the strategy book, as opposed to relying entirely on the community climate action plan. The strategy was derived so that we have a roadmap for us as a government to take action on.
Thank you, Ms. Brose. Mr. Constant.
Thank you. So, since I received the draft copy of this, I've been kind of listening and following groups of people that are working on items that would probably fit under this in some specific ways. And I made a suggestion to somebody, hey, send me some of that language, we might propose an amendment. And I got some splashback from folks who thought maybe this is good enough as it is in the context of the language that's here. What's the strategy for taking these action items, which are pretty general, into specific activities and programs so that we can see these actualized in some ways?
Terrific question. So we talked about this throughout the development of the plan. Some of these are a bit general, and so when, for example, we thought about what it means for building energy codes for future buildings, we couldn't, throughout the processes of developing this, vet all different building energy codes, and so that's going to be a part of the implementation process. So certainly it's something that we will work towards as we go, but in kind of developing this municipal strategy, these are the ones that we're going to focus on. So these are the ones that we're about to get very specific on. So we're already working with different departments on, okay, how do we actually implement this? So that'll be done within our various departments.
So yeah, specifically under your consumption page, I had some neighbors who have gotten their waste down to one small bucket of recyclables and one slightly larger bucket of waste a month. And they call it a waste diet. And I'm like, where does that fit in here? And where do we inspire groups in the community to say, let's have a competition? And so we're specific items. That to me is when we'll start to hit rubber meets the road. It's
Right.
when we're challenging people to do stuff they can do in their own lives.
Totally, yeah. And I think that a piece of that is with our outreach and education work too, which kind of spans the entire plan. But I think it's great to see. We want like community groups to pick this up and be able to say, okay, I'm contributing to this goal. For example, we were at the Master Gardeners Conference the other week, and they were like, oh, we're listed as potential partners on here. Like, we're going to start working on these goals, which was amazing to see. So that's kind of part of this document as well.
Thank you.
And residents want that.
Yeah, no, they're creating
They want to
ways.
know, what can I do in my daily life?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Constant. Ms. Browse, then Mr. Peterson.
Through the chair to Mr. Constant, I think later on in Shana's presentation and also in the resolution there is a call out on the resilience sub-cabinet that is the directors of the departments that are affected by all of these decisions, and we will be the sort of leadership core in making sure that the actions that are coming out of the strategy fit with what the departments are able to perform, and those would come to the assembly for consideration either as ordinance recommendations or infrastructure recommendations, budgetary changes. So that is an ongoing process, and the strategy and the CAP proper will be updated on an ongoing basis. I think the plan is for annually updated strategy booklets to be produced on how far we've come, what the actual outcomes of each of those things are, and where we are in the implementation process.
Thank you, Ms. Browse. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And when Senator Dyson and I were in the legislature, a fund was created to help people get their homes retrofitted to make them more energy efficient. And do you know what percentage of homes in Anchorage or in the state of Alaska got increased efficiency?
There's about 20% of homes in Anchorage went through those programs, and through the home energy rebate program, they're saving 30% a year on average. Less so for the weatherization program, but still significant savings.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a great program.
That was a good start.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Dyson.
Yeah, Thanks. I appreciate the work and pretty comprehensive and well done. A couple of things that will make it difficult for me to support. One is on the land use, the transportation. The thing that's making a huge difference in the transportation sector is natural gas powered vehicles. It ain't here. And I'm bothered that because electric vehicles get so much political correctness support, you know, and but the natural gas vehicles, go to Utah, I mean, they're just amazing. Next time you're in Dallas or Regan, you know, all the taxi cabs, all the vehicles at the airport, buses and stuff, they're all natural gas. And we've got natural gas to burn here in this area, that, and so on and so forth. And it's today's technology, and it's sad to me that it's not here, but it's not new. This city has been unwilling to consider it for 15 years or so, not just this administration. So that's a problem for that. But I appreciate what you said here earlier, about reducing the people's need for transportation. The job of their home and the supermarket are all close. Getting people out and stuff, and more mass transportation and stuff. Guys like me kind of worry that this is irrelevant. It's unfair. You're not using this issue for social engineering, you know, and so on and so forth. And it just rings some alarm bells for me. But what you said is fine, as long as people are willing, you know, to do it. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Constant.
Yeah, just as a note to folks, I submitted a draft ordinance to Mr. Gates, who promptly told me it was illegal, to create a renewable energy tax credit system to allow home builders to, or developers to raise the level of the efficiency of homes in the construction and to make it of value. And the reason it's illegal is because that which is not specifically granted by the state is not allowable. But Mr. Gates has also told me that he has some theories on how that might be achieved in other ways. And so I'm working on that specific strategy right now to come up with a method to locally do what the state stopped doing.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Wells.
Two comments. One, since Chris brought it up, so I was thinking about that too. I made some notes here, but you know, and I think, and you're realtors, you know, if they make a beyond some point of energy efficiency, you don't get a greater selling price for the home.
Right.
So the builder doesn't have an incentive to do it because the homeowner gains all those benefits over time. But I think one thing is like maybe after some point you don't charge a permit fee, you know, for anything that puts you over 4 stars. I don't know the technical side, but it would save a little bit. But you can give something back to the builder,
Right.
so they have some incentive. And just kind of on Fred's thing on the idea of getting people closer to home and work and so on is we are doing that. It's been in our comprehensive plan for decades, and I see it working. I see in my neighborhood, I mean, that Abbott Town Center's got everything I need right there within easy walking distance. But you can also live on the hillside. And but in the past, we had not designed our city to provide that option. Now we design our cities to provide that option, and I think that's been very successful. It has a long way to go. It's working.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Sure, Mr. Constant.
So, back to Mr. Dyson's question about natural gas vehicles. Did anyone contemplate the interim phase, which is moving towards that? In your process, did you contemplate it?
And we didn't exclude it. It's not in the strategy document. It is in the climate action plan. One challenge that I see in kind of looking at both is that you're talking about building infrastructure for 2 different systems that are both ultimately using natural gas. And a benefit that I see in using natural gas through the electric utility, which is you lose some efficiency there certainly, is that ultimately when we increase our demand for that electricity, we can bring on more renewable energy and have a more diverse portfolio, because we are very dependent on natural gas.
So just to follow up then, what I heard you say is it is in here?
we have alternative fuel included. It's not just electric vehicles.
So if we were to amend slightly in a couple words, like alternative fuels like natural gas and gain another vote, would that be objective to anybody? Objectionable?
No, but you don't need me.
I know we don't need you, but we want you. And so, maybe we could consider that as a slight amendment to bring just a bit more support to the table.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And there are jurisdictions out there. I believe Oakland has been financing the placing of solar panels on homes and private homes for quite a number of years as a way, to incentivize energy efficiency. And I don't know if that's a program that and the way it works is the cost of the retrofitting is added into their monthly payment on their mortgage. And I don't know if that's something we want to get into, but it must be working because they've been doing it down there for quite a while. And so I don't know whether we want to take a look at that and see if there's anything that might fit here that they've done there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. All right, we can keep going.
Shall we go?
Yeah.
Okay. That's great because we get to talk about buildings and energy, which is my favorite thing to talk about. We're going to start with energy efficiency. This is a no-brainer. I've said it before. The technology already exists to upgrade our facilities and use less energy. So this is easy. We're going to start with municipal facilities. The Deerstone report that I referenced earlier, the Anchorage Energy Landscape and Opportunities Analysis, identified approximately $3 million of energy efficiency savings through energy efficiency investments. And that's what we need to be doing right away so that we can start realizing those savings. I'll add that the Maintenance and Operations Department has been doing an amazing job through their annual budget to do what they can to upgrade technology and reduce energy use. And they're saving quite a bit of energy. In our commercial and residential private facilities, we have an opportunity for residents and businesses to save around $80 million a year through energy efficiency upgrades. So that means we can't just work within the municipality. We need to look at ways that maybe we can do more home energy rebate programs, ways that we can get residents to invest in their homes and in their businesses and in our city. We're also looking at renewable energy. This year alone, we'll be putting up solar on the Egan Center, Fire Station 10, and at the landfill. It's approximately 134 kilowatts, and I don't have the final numbers, but I'm estimating that will save the equivalent of over 232,000 miles driven by an average person vehicle, passenger vehicle. So that's a really exciting start, and we're going to keep going on those. I'm going to move on. I wanted to give one example. I looked at our data from Solid Waste Services yesterday and pulled out just electric use on one building, the administrative and warm storage building at the Central Transfer Station. And Solid Waste Services has been doing energy upgrades long before I got there, but last year did a pretty good energy upgrade. And as you can see, we are saving over $11,000 from 2018 from the previous year, compared to the previous year. And then if you look at the amount of energy we used in 2014, based on today's rates, we're saving $32,000 in 2018. That's one building. And that doesn't even include all of the energy upgrades because they weren't completed at the beginning of 2018. So in 2019 and 2020, I expect that we'll see more savings.
I have a couple questions. Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you. So my understanding is we're really talking about saving energy costs, but we're not necessarily talking about the initial capital outlay that has to happen in order to basically have more efficient whatever it is that's being used to be more efficient. So do you have any sense of at what point we really come to that break-even point in terms of how much we initially lay out for the upgrade versus at what point we actually are truly saving money?
I think if I understand your exact question correctly, what we're looking at is investments that would pay back in 7 years or less right now.
So is that kind of like the average? It takes 7 years to really
It's kind of-
realize that savings?
It's kind of the standard for like when you're looking at really cost-effective energy efficiency upgrades, people generally use 7-year paybacks. And that's what the energy landscape and opportunities analysis was looking at. So if we are talking about a $3 million savings in the municipality, I would estimate that maybe that would come with a $21 million investment cost. So it's significant. But there are ways to do this so that it works for us. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Ms. Krebs?
And through the chair to Ms. Kennedy, I think to get maybe more specifically into your answer, life cycle costs, which is the cost benefit analysis of the infrastructure pieces that would be implemented going into the future, are taken into consideration on every project that we do. So the question becomes, are we in need of replacing failing infrastructure, and what is the best choice to replace that infrastructure? Or do we have new technology that could be implemented that would save us money over time? So regardless of failure of existing infrastructure, does making the capital investment pay back in its life cycle to validate making that change? All of those things happen on a project-by-project basis and would be included in the justification for the project when it comes before the assembly for approval.
Thank you, Ms. Krebs. Mr. Weddleton?
A couple of points. One thing on Crystal's points. It's not just energy saving on a lot of that. When you switch to LEDs, you're not changing light bulbs as much, and that can be a huge amount of time. So I did my warehouse. It's like 22 feet to swap a bulb. I switched to LEDs when they got cheap enough, and the electricity bill went down. But it was really, I don't have to change it as much. One thing, and it's not in here, but it's in the fatter version. I think we can talk about solar panels, and I think my impression, I read it a few days ago, it was like you're kind of saying, oh, when you get to sell electricity back to the electric company, I would not count that. You get so little. If anyone's buying it based on that, they got about a 40-year payback. So I look at that and I look, someone didn't do their math. So if you deleted all those references, you'd have a more solid report. But I think within what you use for your building, it's a great deal. And I actually, when I did mine, I thought I'd have a 5-year payback, but I was wrong. It looks like 7. So I'm glad to hear that's okay. I was bummed out. Now I'm feeling good.
No, you're doing good.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Mr. Dyson?
Yeah, 2 unrelated questions. But life cycle costs, so when you post something like this, it says how much money we're saving on what I consider really neat stuff that they've done in solid waste services. Does the savings include, does that formulation include what it costs to retire the debt or the capital investment?
This example does not.
Okay.
I understand that should be included. This was just a quick look at where we're at with our bills over the last few years.
So I did the state program on retrofitting my house. Glad to do it, so on and so forth. I won't live long enough to recapture the cost. Most people won't. I spent $16,000 and save a few hundred every year. But it's a good thing to do, but it's still a false economy. I had something else. Oh, in the saving on energy, did you guys think about what do they call it? The nets, the metering, that's net metering. And I don't think it'll work here, but
And are you referring to for renewable energy?
yes.
Do you mean for the whole plan or for solid waste services?
I mean for the whole plan.
The whole plan? We did include an action to increase the net metering limit. Currently, it's at 1.5% of the utility's average sales, which we're about to reach that cap.
What does that mean?
It means that utilities must provide net metering up to a certain level.
Level of consumption or number of meters?
Level of consumption.
Okay.
And because of the growth of solar lately, we're going to reach that cap fairly quickly, which means then utilities won't have to pay anything for that electricity coming in. And I would agree with Assemblyman Member Weddleton. it makes more sense for you to use all of that power on site if you can.
Yeah, so what that means is if you've got solar and so on, and you're producing more than you need for your house, you can sell it to the utility, and the meter differentiates between what you're producing and taking and so on and so forth.
Thank you.
And it can be a great incentive. I think it'll be a long time, with our solar conditions here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Desi. Before I go to you, Mr. Constant, I just wanted to get a sense of how many more slides.
I'm gonna skip through. We just had a quick conversation. We're gonna move along, and what we were gonna go through is in here. And if people have questions, they can certainly ask us.
Got it. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Oh, was there another question?
He's deferring.
He's
Oh, okay.
the one asking.
So, we had some great stuff in land use and transportation, but you'll just have to wait on that. It's in the document. But I did really want to talk about implementation of this plan. This is a quite important piece. The keys to effective implementation are going to be leadership and accountability. We've designed the implementation within the plan to come from really two bodies. The Municipal Resilience Subcabinet would be an internal body made up of representatives from the different departments. It would be chaired by my position, and this group would meet quarterly to really help us work on the progress reports that would come out annually, as well as the annual work plan, which would be an update of this document. This group would also work on the 5-year update of the full climate action plan, which is we scheduled for every 5 years. And work on just challenges throughout the year and updating kind of what the departments are working on and what they would like to continue to work on. The external body is the Anchorage Climate Action Council. This group would be made up of representatives from perhaps the municipality, the university, nonprofits, local utilities, tribal entities, state organizations. And so the idea would be that this group would meet at least annually, and they would be able to provide comment to our progress report and to our annual work plan. They would also be able to comment on the climate action plan every 5 years and provide consultation as we implement on the equity considerations throughout the process. This body, the Anchorage Climate Action Council, does not yet exist. Our partners at the university are working to try to implement this, and they're going to kind of lead that work. Did you want to add anything to this part?
Not really. This was something we heard a lot from the community, that we need some kind of community body to track implementation as well. And so that's kind of the university's responsibility in this partnership.
So I have a question from Ms. Zell and then Ms. Press.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regard to the Municipal Resilience Subcabinet, I'm a really concrete person, so I'm trying to, we're considering options for the port. So will the subcabinet be giving us recommendations on how our climate action plan intersect with something like that?
Is that concrete thing a pun? Shayna loves puns.
No, I totally missed the pun there, sorry. And concrete is bad for cement, yes, okay, I really walked into that one. Nonetheless, will there be, so I'm trying to figure out, will the resilience subcabinet be considering things like that as we're making decisions and making recommendations to us on those types of decisions we're making, or is this, am I taking it too far?
It's a little more collaborative, so independent of the port, the resilience subcabinet wouldn't say to the port, you need to do this. We would be working with the Port of Alaska and developing those goals together, and we have been working with the port on this plan. Does that answer your question?
Not really.
No.
Sorry. So as we're considering options, and those options are put out, and we're gathering information and comment, when we get comment or feedback from the subcabinet on how it either jives or doesn't jive with the climate action plan.
Okay. Do you want to take this one?
Through the chair to Ms. Alatel, I think what you're asking for is something that could happen. It's not intended at the subcabinet level, but the port is on the sub-cabinet, so the port will have these sort of mandates for their operations moving forward and should be incorporating those considerations when they are thinking of construction projects. If the assembly wanted the resilience sub-cabinet to consider something specifically, we can have a conversation about that and see if it's something that they could meet on. It's most likely advisable for it to be considered from the director level of whatever the entity is that you're interested in, because the bulk of the directors who may have something that affects them are part of the resilience sub-cabinet. And another piece to add to Shayna's definition of the duties of the sub-cabinet, it's also the sub-cabinet's responsibility to develop the metrics associated with each of the projects and each of the work items that are in the strategy, so that we have data to measure from here to there. What has the change been? What have the savings been? And any specific metric that will help us understand whether or not those individual projects are being effective and efficient.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dyson?
Yeah, so if you want to reduce, you want to, as a city, reduce local climate change or warming temperatures, well, the worst thing you can do is pull down trees and put black asphalt in parking places. And it's the black body absorption phenomena, you know, dull black absorbs energy faster than anything else. Shiny white reflects it. So it's great for getting the ice off your parking lot. But it's the worst thing we could do. You know, every private pilot knows, watch out when you're gliding in. I mean, you can get a huge updraft from over the parking lots and so on from the heat rising there. Have we done anything to, or should we, to incentivize keeping as much of the tree cover and so on, and not to turn everything down? And have we thought about, is there a way to have less absorptive surfaces, you know, on all of our parking lots and so on? I'm sure brighter people than me have thought about those things, but I just commend it to you. I don't see it here. The reforestation piece particularly.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and that was something that came up from our working groups. There is an action in here around a recommendation to develop an urban forest management plan, which would set those kinds of goals, so that tree canopy cover and so on and so forth. So, yes, we agree. It is important to maintaining the urban forest and looking at incentives to keep it as it is or expand it.
Or enhance.
Enhance it, exactly.
That's exactly what we have in there, but we'd be happy to work on the specifics with you, because that's going to be the challenging part.
I would note for the record that he's the Lorax and he speaks for the trees.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. Thank you, Mr. Constant. So I have two more questions, and if there's anything else that you want to present to us. Mr. Whittleton.
I think you mentioned in here the stormwater utility.
Yes.
It was in there, and that, depending on how they price it out, but they're typically priced by the amount of pervious surface and impervious surface. So that system would encourage you to not pave because you'd save money directly. So that's a big piece of it. Anyway, since we're getting cut short, actually, and Crystal mentioned about infrastructure and all, on the technical advisory committee for AMATs, they wanted someone who was knowledgeable about this stuff, and Shane is now on that committee. So this is kind of institutionalizes it and gets that view. You got all these road building people, engineers there, and then you got a tough fight. But anyway, nice that you're there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you. And something that has been done in some communities in the lower 48 is they painted the roofs of buildings white to reflect the sunlight back, so that the cost of air conditioning that building would go down in the summertime. Now, I know we don't have a lot of air conditioning here in Alaska, but in some areas that might save some energy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Okay, I have one more, and then back to you guys. Mr. Constant.
So, Mr. Wellington brought up an interesting point, the stormwater utility and the idea of less paving, but in some ways that conflicts with our land use code, and I know we breezed over the land use section, but if our design standards and Title 21 require a certain number of paved spots and landscaping that has paved corners and all of this, then we may find some conflicts within our system. And what's the process kind of conceptualized here to address the internal conflicts of our code?
Well, I guess I would say that adopting this plan does not make anything code,
Right.
and so we will still be working, on those same codes and within those same plans that we were. But we expect and hope that the departments will work with us on what makes sense in terms of either greenhouse gas emissions or stormwater as they move forward with those.
So are we intending to see a concrete working group for internal policy change between code sections?
Sure, go ahead.
Through the chair to Mr. Constant. The resilience subcabinet is going to be working through all of these things. Planning is, of course, a member of the resilience subcabinet. So the intent, and you'll notice in the resolution that it says the assembly, in passage of the resolution, agrees to consider these recommendations that are the result of the CAP and the strategy. So the intent would be to bring those things forward to the assembly for consideration with cost-benefit analysis, impact to the community, and leave it up to the body to consider whether or not the changes made there are pro or con, and then move forward from there.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, hello, Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you. Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Sure.
Thank you. Just very quickly. So we have some not exactly codified processes by which administrators, for example, evaluate a rezone and decide whether something is in, the best interest of the city as a whole. And for those kind of broad categories, when administrators are making judgments, can they use this as one of their, maybe not an explicit evaluation criteria, but could they take this plan into account? Thank you.
I would say yes, absolutely. And I've talked to our planning director, Michelle McNulty, and she's really excited about.
Sorry, I have to interject. Chris Shirley, Director of Economic Community Development. We were asked this question by Assemblymember Dunbar previously. There are in code right now, specific to rezones, there are exact criteria that both the Planning and Zoning Commission and this body has to use in evaluating those rezone requests. And they can take into account the recommendations of the Climate Action Plan. The Climate Action Plan is not one of the criteria currently. So I think what Ms. Browse and others were saying is that this is a growing process. This is a visionary document, and all of the codified requirements of land use and development in this community are going to have to adjust to accommodate this vision.
Thank you. Okay. Sure. What else?
Address Chris Constance's comment on the parking. Our code has the minimum parking requirements, so by giving an incentive not to build more, you can do quite a lot. Because our code now doesn't really meet the demand for parking for most buildings, I think. But you don't. But if you have, Costco fills theirs, but Toys R Us never did. They built way beyond what they're required to, so it dampens that.
And if I might, just to Mr. Schuette's point, we just approved an ordinance that allows some flexibility in Title 21 for changes that are considered to be just administrative or corrections. And so it seems like we have some precedent for allowing some variation in our plan that's less strict than some of the current land use codes and requirements on, say, zoning. I think that was just one example, but there are a number of them. So it might be wise to come up with a table of adjustments that can be applied related to certain impacts. It has to be thought through and then pass this law, but it seems like we have some flexibility that we could apply.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Okay, the remainder of the time is yours. 2 minutes, really.
35 seconds.
What we didn't get to was tracking and monitoring, which is a really important piece, and we've been working to determine what kind of measurement and metrics we can use. We did have some fancy slides that we were going to share, but what I want people to know is that this is a very important part of the plan, and it's also a bit of a challenge getting the data, asking what kind of metrics we want to track, which ones we can track. And so are tracking greenhouse gas emissions, but there are other indicators of success throughout the development of the plan that we will be monitoring and sharing with the public. In closing, I guess I will stop there. And thank you for your time.
I think we'll also offer that if you do have follow-up questions, we're happy to answer those about the content of either document going forward. So thank you all.
Well done.
Thank you. All right. So we'll go ahead and close this work session.